In the first part of this series, I discussed what gaslighting is as a psychological process that destabilizes perception and slowly erodes self-trust in relationships. If you missed it, I'll put a link to it in the comments so you can catch up. So here in part 2, I'm going to discuss how to recognize and respond to gaslighting in real time. That includes how it hides inside of logical fallacies, why those fallacies are effective under emotional pressure, and how they pull you away from reality without ever needing an outright lie. From there, I'll discuss what it means to fight forms of gaslighting with facts. That means refusing to let alternate realities affect your real experience, and how to respond to it with clarity and restraint and leadership.
It's time to all choose your timeline on the roller coaster of life.
As I mentioned in part 1, gaslighting rarely relies on outright lies because lies collapse under scrutiny. Instead, it relies on logical fallacies, which are intentional errors in reasoning that feel persuasive because they're delivered emotionally, confidently, and even with moral conviction. And cognitive appraisal theory is one way to help explain why this works. It's that how information is interpreted directly shapes emotional responses, because emotions influence what we think. And research in 2009 showed that emotional reactions are shaped by cognitive processing, not just events themselves. And once emotion leads, facts become negotiable. This is why gaslighting conversations and logical fallacies, which I'll break down here in just a moment, feel so disorienting. One moment you're discussing something concrete, and the next you're being told that you've never been supportive, even after clear evidence to the contrary. And that's not your broken down memory. It's a misstatement of facts, whether done intentionally or not. Listen, to unwitting people, gaslighting crowds out reality by elevating emotionally framed words over observable events. Let me lean more into the psychology here. Cognitive appraisal theory explains why arguing with gaslighting techniques rarely works. Debating someone else's emotions when they're detached from reality only leads to escalation. As an example, in 1991, a researcher by the name of Lazarus explained that appraisal is what either fuels emotional reactivity or preserves composure. As such, the moment you start negotiating interpretation instead of facts, you've shifted into unstable ground. So let's break down core logical fallacies that often accompany gaslighting, and I'll put those up here on the screen for those of you who like the visual references. Because once you recognize them, you can respond to each while it's happening instead of realizing it 30 minutes or months later. So first, the fallacies that attack you. Ad hominem attacks redirect the focus from the issue to your character. So instead of addressing what actually happened, the argument becomes about who you are as a person. And it'll sound something like this. You're wrong about this because you're clearly bitter and unsuccessful. Or, this is why no one takes you seriously. You're always so defensive. The implication here is that your perspective is invalid regardless of the facts. And then we have hasty generalizations, which reinforce by collapsing isolated moments into permanent identities. This would sound something like, you never listen, or this is how you always are, or even, you've always been selfish. Attachment theory helps explain why this one sticks. See, anxious attachment people, they tend to interpret single events as global threats, while avoidant dynamics may lead you to disengage rather than challenge the framing. Either way, nuance disappears and the narrative hardens. The next category includes fallacies that trap you. Let's start with false dilemmas, and these remove all reasonable options by forcing extremes. So you'll hear something like, either you admit that you're wrong or you don't love me. Or maybe it's, if you cared about me at all, you wouldn't question my decisions. And here, any attempt to clarify becomes evidence of your emotional failure. Next is the circular arguments that make solutions impossible by looping emotions back onto themselves. For example, it might sound like, I'm upset because you hurt me, and the fact that you don't see it just proves that you're hurting me. Here, facts never enter the loop because the conclusion is embedded in the premise. So the conversation becomes self-sealing, continuous loop that just never ends. The next one here is slippery slope, in which arguments escalate pressure by exaggerating consequences. A simple boundary meets a response like this. So now I can never rely on you, or this is why I can never have a conversation with you. These arguments are not designed to be accurate. They're designed to accelerate compliance by attaching catastrophic meaning to resistance. And the third group includes fallacies that distract or attempt to override reality. We'll start with red herrings, and these derail conversations the moment facts become inconvenient. For example, you raise a specific concern, and suddenly the focus shifts to something that happened months ago or even an unrelated grievance. The original issue never gets resolved because attention keeps moving. Next one we have here is appeals to authority or consensus that replace evidence with social pressure. These will sound something like, any therapist would agree with me. Or, everyone sees this, why can't you? Or maybe it's, most people would think that you're wrong here. Research on social conformity shows that perceived consensus often overrides personal judgment, especially under emotional stress. So lived experience gets crowded out by imagined authority. So this is where I think most men lose when they participate in these exchanges. These tactics don't succeed because they're logical. They succeed because they apply pressure. And most people fold under pressure, especially unprepared people in relationships. Once pressure replaces structure, many guys start responding to emotion as a way to de-escalate rather than responding with clarity. They don't use these exchanges because they lack logic, but rather because they're conditioned to prioritize emotional resolution over structural clarity. That's because in today's society, socialization emphasizes de-escalation, accommodation, and explanation rather than holding your ground. And in turn, when emotional distress appears, many men interpret this as a signal to respond to rather than to hold firm on their values. Back to the psychology of it all. Decades of research in cognitive dissonance confirm that when your reality is at odds with somebody else's emotional statements, discomfort follows. Nearly 70 years ago, famed psychologist Leon Festinger showed that people often reduce this internal discomfort by justifying inconsistent information rather than confronting it directly. And in relationships, this shows up when strong emotions contradict clear evidence. Over time, repeated accommodation trains you to surrender clarity in exchange for temporary peace. So, what does fighting with facts really mean? Fighting with facts does not mean arguing more, continued repetition, or trying to convince someone who is emotionally invested in control. It means refusing to let reality drift. See, facts anchor conversations to reference points. But be careful, because emotions may state irrelevant facts with confidence. When irrelevant facts are emotionally charged, the gaslighter's authority shifts to whoever controls the emotional narrative. And this is where your masculine leadership should enter as stability. And I want to make this very, very clear, because this is the point of all of this discussion. If you're waiting for the perfect sentence to prevent gaslighting and the logical fallacies that I've discussed, you're focusing on the wrong thing. There is no line that prevents gaslighting. We can only recognize it when it happens and respond accordingly in real time. Because the moment you're stuck for words, you're already reacting. So the solution is not something to memorize that you will say the next time it happens. It's a lifestyle orientation. It's recognizing what's happening as it's happening and responding from expectation instead of pressure. You got to see it coming. And in that moment, your response may involve speaking, it may involve silence, or creating distance, or some other form of disengagement. But it always starts with knowing where you stand before you decide what you're going to say or do. So let's talk about how masculine leadership responds. My belief is that masculine response maintains clarity without escalation. It refuses unwritten timelines. It declines hypothetical accusations. And it does not defend facts against emotional interpretation. It states what happened once. It does so calmly, and it does so without chasing agreement or appeasement. Masculinity in relationships is maintained through consistency and restraint, not emotional responses. What happens when facts don't work? Let me take a moment to reiterate that it's rare for facts to resolve gaslighting or to combat the logical fallacies that we've discussed. And research theories and data will never have and never will predict individual people's behaviors and outcomes. But we can use them as extremely valuable guidelines to beat the odds. Walking away from circular dynamics is not avoidance, it's containment. That's because disengagement is often the only move that preserves self-respect and your psychological stability. Not every conflict can be fixed. Some of them can only be exited. And this is where the research converges with real-time and real-world judgment. When facts no longer anchor the conversation, disengagement becomes the best move to preserve, as I mentioned, your self-respect and your psychological stability. For those of you who are dedicated enough to still be here, let me close with this. Gaslighting undermines authority by making reality unstable. Logical fallacies keep that instability alive by shifting attention, distorting meaning, and applying pressure to comply. Facts, on the other hand, restore footing when they're paired with boundaries and restraint. In part one, my focus was clinical context of gaslighting and what it means for men. Here in part two, the focus is responding to forms of it. Winning an argument may feel good, but fighting with facts is not about winning. It's about standing on what's real and refusing to negotiate truth. So if you've experienced this kind of dynamic, you've probably felt the confusion first, and then the pressure, and then only too late, the clarity. If any of these patterns sounded familiar, please leave a comment and share what you noticed or how it showed up for you. Other men will recognize this themselves, and even if they don't even have the language for it, they'll appreciate it. And if you know a man who's stuck in circular arguments, constantly explaining himself or doubting his own memory in relationships with women, do him a favor and share this with him. Because some guys just need permission to speak up. And sometimes recognition is the first step back to regaining purpose. So thank you tremendously for being here. I'll see you the next time.